All right, now let's talk about the periodic table and atomic structure. So this is actually one of my favorite parts of science is learning about the atom and its structure and how the periodic table is laid out and what they have to do with each other. So always one of my favorite topics. All right. So here we have an atom, and we're going to break it down in a little bit piece by piece. But we're going to talk about the three subatomic particles of an atom. And that just means, I know it sounds like a real fancy term, but it just means the parts that make up an atom, right? And there's three specifically that we're going to focus on. If you get into more advanced chemistry classes, you can actually dive into, or physics classes, you can dive even further. But for an introduction chemistry class, this is what we will learn in this course. Right. So here in the center, you have the nucleus. And again, we'll break it down a little further. But in this very center, you have what's called the nucleus, the very center of an atom. And it's made up of protons and neutrons. And then those things you see kind of flashing around the outsides, the orbits on the outside, those are the electrons. And so again, this is just like a general view of the atom. But let's dive deeper into the atom, the atomic structure. All right, so an atom, as I mentioned previous in a previous lesson, they're the Legos of the universe, right? The basic building blocks of all matter. So an atom is just the smallest unit of ordinary matter that forms a chemical element. So in this case, Sn is tin, right? And you see that up on the right hand side, Sn, right beneath that, you see tin. So this is actually an example of an atom of tin. Right, and here you also see the center is a nucleus made of protons and neutrons, and then the outside, those things kind of orbiting around, are the electrons, those little white circles, those spheres. Right, so atoms, every solid, liquid, gas, and plasma is composed of atoms. Right, everything's made of atoms, pretty much. Atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, and we're going to see that again. The protons and neutrons in the nucleus, and the electrons orbiting around outside. And so here we have the periodic table. We saw this earlier already, and this is just, I like to think of it as kind of like the neighborhood where the atoms live, and each one of them has their own address. So, like at one right here, you'll always find hydrogen. Go all the way to the right. At two, you'll always find helium, three, lithium, four, beryllium. And in this class, we're just going to kind of skip the ones in the middle. In an intro class, you really don't dive into those too much. And then we're going to focus again over here on boron, or this side of the periodic table. So everything beneath boron and carbon. And here again, a five will always be for boron, six will always be for carbon. So again, this is kind of like their neighborhood where they live. And the numbers here, which are called atomic numbers, and we'll get into that, they're kind of like their address. Right. So this table illustrates the chemical elements, and it's arranged in order of their atomic numbers, and they're shown in related groups. So that's kind of crazy that what you see here is what makes up everything in the universe, right? The stars, the air, people, animals, flowers, all of that is made up of just like different combinations of this table of elements. And so here we have it broken down into metals, metalloids, and nonmetals. You can even break it down further than this, but in this class, this is basically what we're going to be looking at when we're talking about breaking this down, right? So the metals you see here in the yellow, the metalloids in the purple, and then the nonmetals in the green. And the one that kind of stands out is going to be this hydrogen. You see it's green, but it's over here with the yellow metals. That's the only instance where this will happen, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.